All right, Jason, let's put on our information hat. We told Jason at the start of the show he couldn't use the word data.
Don't ask a former editor to play a game of words.
I caught you say information instead of data. I liked it. It was nice. What do you think is going to be the biggest thing for 2026?
Statistics.
Love it.
Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer extortion. The X makes it sound cool.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up the biggest stories of 2025 and look forward to see what 2026 holds for the industry. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 514, 2025 in review. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek, your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by three of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jason Knott. He is the evangelist over at D-Tools. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Then we have my good friend, Ms. Katye McGregor-Bennett. She's the president at KMB Communications. How are you, ma'am?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Over in balmy Montana. Then
Stop it.
we've got the one and only Uncle Richie, Mr. Richard Fregosa. He's the principal at Fregosa Design. How are you, sir?
Mary. It's good to see you, my friend. It's been more than a minute, so
It has.
glad to be here.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, actually, last time I was pinch hitting, so while you were off doing some Canada stuff.
We do those. I like to double dip. What can I say? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our end of year wrap up show. So we have no weekly stories because it's the end of year wrap up. So today we are going to talk about two different things: the biggest story and talking point of 2025 and what we think is going to be the big thing for 2026. All right, Jason, we shall start with you, sir. What was your biggest story, takeaway, etc. from this year?
So it's not really an individual story, but my biggest takeaway from 2025 on the residential side is now the influx of M&A activity and franchise opportunities and all those sorts of things that are happening that never, ever, ever happened in this industry. You know, I'm going back 20 plus years ago. I can remember having the first CE Pro 100 Summit, and I had Tweeter and Best Buy on the panel, and they at that time were talking. And now, so this goes so back to think about the only potential buyers of custom installation companies at that time were retailers. So, and they were saying, well, once you get to $5 million, then we're of interest. And it was interesting because I was thinking, geez, I don't know if any of these companies are ever going to get to $5 million. And now, of course, the retail buyers are not around anymore, but we're seeing these M&A activities that are taking place where companies are merging. And then, of course, we've seen this Daisy franchise growth that has coming about with, operations in Boston, Indianapolis, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, or Orlando, Florida. I mean, they are growing like weeds. And that to me is the biggest story that we've seen. We're for the first time seeing that custom installation companies are of such a value that people want to invest in them, and they're willing to either merge with them or acquire them or form franchise opportunities. So I'm not talking about on the manufacturer side, although if you look back, and I was looking back, there wasn't that a lot of M&A activity on the manufacturing side, on the Resi side. We had Sound United got bought by Harman. We had RTI being bought by AV Pro, but there really weren't that many acquisitions taking place on the Resi side. Now, I'm going to spin here for one quick second. The one thing that I will note is how much more active the commercial AV side of this business is right now than the residential side in terms of what we're seeing in terms of growth activity, M&A activity. And again, just a kind of another lesson. This is an old school thing. We could have said the same thing for the last 5 years. Integrators need to have some sort of a commercial element, I believe, to the business and not just be solely isolated in the residential side right now.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. All right, Katie, from your perch in the mountains of Montana. Again, the balmy mountains of Montana, the snow-free mountains.
Is this torture? Are you queuing me up by torturing me, or?
I never get to say this. I'm always on with you, and you've been posting photos of like these beautiful snow-covered landscapes while I'm sitting here in 40-degree weather, patiently awaiting snow. Yeah, it's tough when this turns around, isn't it?
I know it is. It's painful. It's painful.
Mm-hmm. What was your biggest takeaway of this past year?
Well, I absolutely mirror what Jason was saying, and I think there's another chapter to that, which is the emergence of a viable exit strategy really came into view this year, and a lot of it was through M&A. But to his point, we've seen now a more logical approach to different business models that don't have to be tied to exit strategies, but at least now there's an exit strategy that's in view that peers have gone through. And now there is a peer group that can advise those that are considering or have been previously not sure what an exit strategy looked like if it didn't just include closing the door one last time and walking away. And I think that is kind of, it's kind of if we were to look at it from an exciting standpoint, that is really exciting, because for as long as I've been doing this, that exit strategy has been good luck. Please maybe they have friends and they want to buy our firm too, to now being there are options out there, and depending on what the growth pattern is for your business, what how much involvement the ownership wants to continue to have, you've got options now. And I think that's, to me, is really exciting from what we saw transpire. I think it's going to get really interesting in 26 and onward into 27 as more of that happens, and then we've got a little bit more data. Just said I can use that word, Jason can't.
Yeah.
But we have more data to put behind that conversation too. Is what do exit strategies look like? What do they feel like? How are they monetized? So it's as much as a look back as it is a look forward for me on that one.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, Uncle Richie, bring us some mellow West Coast thoughts on what 2025 looked like.
I'm coming in with heaters, man. I'm not throwing the junk. I'm not junk balling here. I'm bringing the heat. I thought about this a lot, and I think that the independent dealer has started seeing the signs of coming to a crossroads, for a couple of reasons. The idea of what luxury AV has changed just because of the changing of the generations. The sale and the sizzle, or whatever you want to call it, of 30 years ago, and kind of the bespoke, or what luxury meant in the AV environment, is very different now. I think the expectations require a lot more education. But what I've noticed the most with retail dealers, or with custom dealers, is there are a lot of long-standing relationships with manufacturers that are just being seriously looked at, or they're just going, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I'm talking about dealers who have been around dealing with, let's just say, the large control companies who, and I think this dovetails directly into what Jason was talking about the franchising, the buying groups and everything else, is that because the market for luxury goods is dropping, all of the manufacturers, say the control manufacturers, have maintained their buy-ins, the dealer requirements. And I'm finding that a lot of the dealers are looking at, in terms of like single source venues, or, single source manufacturers are going, you know what? It's kind of both sides, is that the manufacturers are coming in and saying, and the turnover right now on the manufacturing side. Like, I know several companies where the regional sales manager, it is almost like they can make a calendar out of it. It's like the regional sales manager of the month club. Before I can even write down the number of one, there's another one in there. And the part for me that's heartbreaking is that, and I've talked about it many times, is that the industry we're slowly finding our ways into an industry of nostalgia, that if you've been around long enough, you're now looking at it with a different lens of how it used to be, which is fine. And you can kind of embrace what it took for us all to get here. But now that we are, quote unquote, start at the bottom, now we're here. one of the things that we're seeing now, and I had talked about it for years, and my biggest concern was the commoditization of the dealer network, the commoditization of going into the distribution model. That as these mergers and these acquisitions are coming on the manufacturer level, but also the independent reps, the buying groups, all of these things that Jason was talking about, it is a fundamental shift that if you are a company in this industry who says, I'm a custom guy and I'm an AV guy, you've got to start taking very uncomfortable looks at how you're going to sustain yourself, because it's either a go along to get along, or you have to chart your own way, knowing that you're going to have to start punching above your weight class. I look at the Bay Area, incredible, decades long histories of these companies who are now, still singular dealers, but they are now fighting with a national brand of really good dealers who are bringing in the model. And again, we saw all of this 30 years ago in commercial. It's like none of this is new. It's that lag effect that's occurring that, imagine that. Process is important. Having the right technical team. No, the one guy doesn't have to do everything. You can specialize and you can share workload. Project management counts. All of these things that, we always looked at, the commercial was, kind of the grown up side of the industry, and custom was always the rock and roll. If you are going to be following your passion in this industry, which a lot of the guys I still talk to are like, they love the dedicated cinema experience. Absolutely. They love being able to deliver a UI that's intuitive and that's theirs and that's personalized and bespoke. And, again, it's always my love. Custom AV is always like my first kiss. It is that to me for my career. It's the first kiss of my career is the way I've always looked at it. But it's changed, right? Now you're looking back and it's like, my career is the one with, 4 kids and a mortgage and a sore back looking back, and I don't know if I have the right advice right now for somebody who says, hey, I really want to get into this. Because my first option would be Resi should be something that you can do when you can find it, because commercial guys won't do. Commercial guys will go out of their way to not do Resi, which is honestly which is kind of your ace in the hole there. But it still gives you the opportunity to find your ways into the commercial, into restaurant, Resi-mercial, any of those things that you want to find. But just trying to make a living selling TVs and speakers and AV receivers, that brother's got to eat, and you ain't going to be eating much on just that, very rarely, unless you're in a major metropolitan area. I talk to guys who are in, a little bit more remote spaces of the country, and they're like, hey, how do I break into this? And I'm like, not the way you're trying. Not the way you're trying. I know it's great, and I know you think you cracked the code here, but we went through that 20 years ago. So this is time for something new. And the big thing that I'm seeing now as well, along with that is machine level learning, and not in the way of like you have ChatGPT write your marketing campaign. It's abysmal. I've gotten to the point now where I can immediately tell what's going on. I stopped reading because I'm like, just because you wrote 10,000 words about how great this is, I don't care, because I know you didn't write it. I know you didn't even care. You put in a prompt and away it went. So, I think that there's also some opportunity there, being individual and finding your ways and hitting the mark. And I think, Katie can probably talk to that a little bit more than I can in terms of finding kind of the zeitgeist of where the market is. But, again, the things that are happening here, which we saw, the move to distribution, the loss of the independent sales rep, the way that, just kind of our market and the bits and bytes of the stuff that we sell, we have to deal with the generational shift. You got Gen Alpha buyers coming in. Now, we're not even talking baby boomers anymore. You're talking 3 generations past now who are going to be the buying power working their way in. And the, kind of punk rock and roll way of approaching this. And, again, I still love being able to walk in front of a client going, hey, you want to see something cool? And we show them something cool. I've just found that even in our business model, we've had to adjust our expectations of how many residential clients during the year we get to do that. Now I'm like standing in front of a judge going, hey, judge, you want to see something cool? It's way different, and fortunately I wasn't under cuffs when I showed up. So I look at that, I view that as the best way possible to do it. But, we are definitely in evolve or go extinct over, I think the next 36 months, really.
Yeah.
It's just, you can just see it in the way the conversations are happening and changing with even just your primary manufacturers who used to be, first name basis relationships. We're now moving into, like I said, hey, it's, RSM, January's RSM of the month. Come on in,
Just to spin off of what Rich is saying, I agree wholeheartedly is, so just looking at D-Tools information, I can tell you that it was about 8% of integrators who'd identify themselves as commercial guys did a residential job. But 28% of residential guys did a commercial job who self-identify as resi as their main focus. So the couple things that I think are where the business model is having to evolve, per Rich's point, is the recurring revenue that integrators, I think, in order to make up for this commodity level shift that's happening on the equipment side, they absolutely need to develop some sort of a recurring revenue stream of income through service agreements, monitoring, whatever it might be. I think a lot of guys have developed that. They still need to do more. And then the other part is, I think, protecting their labor margin, which I don't know if it was a curse or of a blessing that it was great that integrators could sell $250,000 projectors. That's awesome. For all these years, they could do that, and they could rely on making their money on equipment margin. And now we have so many products that have a much more limited margin that they sell, that they're having to protect the margin on their labor. And, I can remember years ago during the recession, an integrator called me up. He's like, oh, I'm really having trouble. I don't know what to do. We don't have a pipeline. And then I talked to him a few months later at one of the shows. I'm like, hey, whatever happened on that pipeline? He goes, oh, we resolved it. We offered free installation. And I'll never forget thinking, that's in the long term. I can't believe, maybe that solved you to get out of your pipeline issue, but you're really killing your value. And I don't think integrators would ever even think about doing that again now.
I would hope not. All right. Before we go into the predictive aspect of this, I'll give you my 2 cents as well. I think the biggest story that I saw out of this year, or trend maybe is more accurate, is the simplification of what we're doing. And if you eliminate that upper 10% of ultra luxury and ultra bespoke projects, this projects and the systems that are being done by the vast majority of integrators has been greatly simplified. Doesn't mean they're not great, doesn't mean they're not effective and useful, but I think we're just seeing a massive simplification of technology that's coming forward, and what customers are expecting is simplifying too. The other aspect that kind of plays into that a little bit is I think the channel has become much more a jack of all trades, especially for the smaller shops. They are doing anything and everything. If you can wrap a tech label on it, they're doing it. We've watched a bunch of dealers in our area, and just across the US that I follow, they're doing everything from, your traditional verticals that would fall under, home technology. They're doing permanent Christmas lights. They're doing literally just all of these other little things to continue to expand what they're offering. But it's all standalone. And it'll be very interesting to see where that goes going forward, for better or for worse.
So Matt, real quick, when you talk about simplification, Do you mean more limited in scope in terms of what you're providing the customer, or you don't mean the technology's gotten so great that it's easier to use?
I don't think that the technology has necessarily gotten so great. But how many years ago was it where almost every installation that had more than 3 TVs in it had a video matrix? And now you almost never sell a video matrix, unless, again, it's a large scale luxury situation where you're doing something distributed over the network. How long ago was it where, 50 to 75% of all projects had a multi-room control system in it? The tech, I don't want to say the technology has gotten simpler, because that's a bit of a misnomer if you actually understand all aspects of the tech that's going in. But how many rooms call for a TV on a wall with a soundbar and nothing else? You don't even need a cable box anymore, right? You don't need a streaming box anymore. This was the first year that I can ever remember where we didn't sell a rack we sold one rack into a residential project all year. One.
Wow.
Because again, that's differing, right? You're not seeing it as much. Now, that doesn't mean that some of our projects didn't have racks in them. But for new projects from the get-go, we had one that had a rack. It's just that market is shifting dramatically. And whether that's, it's a combination of the market, the technology, the client's desire, right? All of those Gen Alpha people you're talking about, and they don't want a rack. Half the time they barely want a TV because they can watch it on their phone or whatever, right? Like it just, we're seeing an evolution of the market that is really, to Rich's point, causing a lot of consolidation in everything. And a couple of years ago, we talked on probably this show and on AVWeek about the slow spiral death of the middle market. And it's kind of come to roost now. That's not to say that the middle market doesn't exist, but what the scope of work used to be for middle market is no longer what it once was. And you can argue that that's similar for the commercial AV world as well. You can look at going into, we used to do restaurants that had 20 to 30 speakers in them. And now we do a bunch of restaurants where the owner wants 3 Sonos Play Ones or whatever they're called now in the corners. And that's all they want because it's simple, it's easy, and it's cheap. And if it breaks, they just go buy another one. I literally just did a walkthrough with the showroom for a really, really cool design house here in town. They have a full integrated system that started to fail, and they replaced it with a bunch of Sonos plugged into the wall. We're now going to fix it, but simplification is where it's at. All right, Jason, let's put on our information hat. Since I caught you say information instead of data. I liked it. It was nice.
Don't ask a former editor to play a game of words.
Yep. We told Jason at the start of the show he couldn't use the word data.
That's just mean.
Which is why he pulled information. What do you think is going to be the biggest thing for 2026? And if you say data, we're going to have words.
Statistics.
Love it.
So it would be easy, I think, for all three of us to say AI, and that would be that's kind of the overwhelming thing of that everybody's talking about. But the one thing that I am encouraged about is that we are seeing more companies, both at the integrator level and at the manufacturer level, recognize that they do need to look at what's happening in the market from a trend standpoint to, accurately predict their new product trends, accurately predict their inventory levels, accurately predict how many dealers they need in a certain region, do comparative analysis of what their reps versus the distributors are able to produce for them. So that sort of stuff that was always behind the scenes that maybe only the most sophisticated manufacturer was engaged in, now I think that's going to become the norm. So that was really hard for me to talk about without saying an actual number. But I did it.
Or data. I love it. I don't disagree with you. All right, Katie, what is your big thing for 2026?
My big thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So my big thing, it's a prediction as well as me begging the industry at large, is that adopt the tools, but humanize and utilize the tools as a human would to make sure that your prompts are accurate and your output is accurate before you share the thing with somebody else, suggesting that you are a subject matter expertise or that you validated the data, the numbers, the information, the statistics. See, I'm going to throw them all right in there. And it's literally, it's a plea to the community is thank you for adopting the tools. But please, I beg of you, start taking the time to humanize the results of those tools. I cannot say enough how many mistakes I am fixing on a regular daily basis and how much of my time as a professional communicator is being spent continuing to guide friends and clients on the fact that I see what you're doing. But to Richie's point and Jason's point, we know, we as humans can tell if you are not humanizing that output. And I'm just going to say shame on you if you continue to do that, because there will be a reckoning, and it could literally be your liability that you are risking, or your company's livelihood, your company's reputation. Garbage in, garbage out has always been a thing, and that didn't change in 25, and it's not going to change in 26 or in the future. Use the tools, just humanize them so that the work that we do in the channel continues to be viewed as very unique, very special, and therefore has a lot of value and needs to be paid for. If we continue to go down the path of least resistance, garbage in, garbage out, let's just see what we can get away with because maybe they don't understand as well as we do on the other side, we're creating an opportunity for the greater consumer audience to stop caring what we do and to not want to buy what we do and not trusting what we do. And that, my friends, is something that I live in fear of every day, because until we start growing the piece of our collective pie, Matt, I told you I was going to do it one more time this year, growing our collective piece of the pie, all we're doing is shrinking it. And if we're not humanizing the output of these tools, we're literally just eating that last remaining piece of the pie, and we're gorging ourselves, and it's not going to be anything left. Little drama, but as a communicator, I have to tell you that it is a crisis. And if we don't start realizing that the tools need to be humanized in order for the quality output to be really, truly quality, we're driving a stake into our hearts. And that would be really, really sad considering how far we have come. You know what I mean? So that's the thing is, I think it's, the tools are going to continue to be really important, but it's how we use them that's going to make a big difference in ultimately in our livelihood and where we are, what we're talking about this time next year.
Yeah, I'll say it for you, Katie. It's just pure laziness.
It is.
It is. Like it takes 2 seconds to actually make it sound like it was spoken by a normal person who exists.
A few less M dashes. I don't know.
And,
there's one tip.
Yeah. I've had to stop using dashes because I like them.
I do too.
And it's become a problem.
I know.
Because I write something and they're like, did AI write that? No. Look how badly written it is.
One emoji per line too. Anyways.
Yeah. Stop using emojis in professional environments, for the love of God. All right, Richie. What do you see as the biggest aspect of 2026?
I think what we're going to wind up seeing, hopefully, is, we fell in love with voice control for so long that really voice control was just a way of saying that you wanted automated systems, and you wanted not automated systems, but you wanted systems that had, we call it anticipatory service, right? We want systems to be able to And I think that's where the machine learning language is going to make a difference, is that as a system can learn your patterns with the growth of the computing technology, it will be able to perform those functions without a custom program written. I think that is where there is some openings for it. I think that there are some really good technology companies out there in the CI market that have an opportunity to kind of jump on and maybe punch above their weight coming into the new year. That, before we just kind of had the 3-letter companies, or they were all ended in on. We're kind of running that market. And I think that there are going to be, like I said, some middleweights who might have the ability to punch up in their weight class along that. And I think that, because again, like I said, the way that, single manufacturer dealerships and those relationships are changing, and the way that distribution is opening up, I think that as those smaller dealers in numbers can start finding their way in, because on one side, you do have these companies that are consolidating and becoming part of, kind of this giant buying group. But by that same token, then they have to start sticking with just those manufacturers. Yeah. So as a smaller person, you can go, yes, well, you may be here, but there's also this. And so I think it's an opportunity to be nimble in a way that maybe a lot of integrators aren't looking at. But the big part that Jason was talking about, I've been saying it for a while, be a service company, be a service provider, be someone who is, when they used to say I got a guy, it used to be I got the guy who sold me the projector, and I got the guy who sold me the TV and the $20,000 speakers and everything else. Now the guy it's your technology guy, the person who fully understands your network, who deploys it, who monitors it, who has everything set in place. Kind of our rule with our clients, and I always tell them, if you don't feel that you're being spoiled by us, we're not doing our job. However, you are paying for that feeling. So we're going to meet you. We're going to meet you there. We will spoil you, but we also expect to be compensated so that, if you call on a Sunday, somebody is picking up. And again, this is for the smaller guys. For companies that are growing or maybe don't have the technical expertise, there are the third-party companies who are out there providing monitoring solutions. But even then, depending on how many clients you have, it could be cost prohibitive. But once you establish what you're good at, and, this is just a sales guy 101, if you continue to focus on customer service, if you get away from the product and you focus on determining what sets you apart in a crowded market and laser focus on that, and you find the right client, and you build on that, and you focus on the people you already have that you sold projects on, and start trying to figure out and blow all of your money on the people that you want to try to get, because you're all starting to clamor for that. Everybody's reaching for that ring on that merry-go-round. So, it's not quite the recession, kind of hunker down and kind of figure it out, but you should be taking that same approach if your company was around during one of the recessions or the dot-bomb, to refocus and to say, okay, what are we good at? What are we bad at? What can we find to make sure that we stay focused on what we're good at? And almost all of the integrators that I know, the one thing that I can always say about them is they care, And like I said, on the commercial side, trust me, they do not want to call at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday. Just doesn't happen. There is some leverage in there. Again, when you're doing restaurant work, when you're doing bar work, when you're doing everything that's outside of it, but even people who are doing remote work now for companies, like there's Soho, there's small office, home office opportunities in there. Like, there's riches in the niches. Like, I'll say it over and over and over again, but, focus on that. And I think that the successful, smaller, independent dealers are going to start figuring out they need to double down there. Because we're going to see all the stuff in the press, and so-and-so got acquired, and this happened, and they're franchising here. That's well and great. If you want to go ahead and do an exit strategy, well, you need to be doing that anyway in order to be a attractive acquisition target. All of these things fall together on it. And, hopefully you start working on the business of your business.
That's a very good point. All right, I will wrap this quickly and let y'all get on your way. I think 2026 is going to be, to somewhat piggyback on Richie for a moment, a year of focusing on where you see your business going. Because I think that private equity is going to figure out, just like they have in plumbing and HVAC, they're going to figure out that there is a potential pot of gold in the tech service companies. And the second they start to move into it, you thought Daisy was a little disruptive, PE is going to light something up. For better or worse. Unknown how that'll potentially play out, because we're seeing it play out a little bit in, again, plumbing, HVAC, etc. That could have a very disruptive effect on our channel if it happens. I don't know for certain that it will, but I've seen some stuff that's alluding that it may, and that will give or cause the integration world to focus on what they actually want to do. Because heck, I saw it last week. Landscape companies are trying to hang your TVs now. All of that is, gosh, I talked to a GC the other day who is doing all their own technology. It's not great, but they're doing it because it's easier than bringing in someone like us for reasons that you can figure out on your own. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to leave it there on that lovely ray of sunshine. Jason, if people want to connect with you, learn more about all of the data that D-Tools has available to them, where can they do that?
So the most exciting thing about this conversation is that not one of us mentioned tariffs. And think about how that was the dominating topic for the last 3 years. Everybody didn't know where it was going to go, what was going to happen to the market. And now it's old news. So I'm very, very excited about that. But yeah, in order to reach me, you can go to our website, d-tools.com, or just dtools.com. And you can find me on all the social media platforms.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Katie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Canby Communications, learn how to turn their prompts into something normal, where can they do that?
I would love to help make your prompts return a much better outcome. So call me. Follow us across the sphere. KMB Communications, we're the one with the mountain in our logo. You can find me, Katye Bennett, on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Fregosa, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Fregosa Design, where can they do that?
Well, you can find us on the interwebs and the socials. Fregosa Design is the company, at rfregosa on the various socials. As I always say, I hope where you will find me most is here on AVNation.tv and our suite of shows serving the verticals in the audiovisual industry, including right here with ResiWeek, but AVWeek, and one that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's almost as old as Matt's show, A State of Control, which is going through a new format change that we're excited to be showing off soon with my partner in crime there, Steve Greenblatt.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us, not only in this episode, but throughout the entire year. We are greatly appreciative of it. Here, the whole team of us. If you would like to connect with me, you can do that at Matt D. Scott on most of the socials. But more importantly, as Richie said, please visit avnation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.